he's all about it.
He's traveling a lot. He's testing a lot. You know, we've had some I mean, he went to Columbus, for goodness sake, last week, and that's not close to Long Island where he's from.
No.
So we know he's going to be traveling a bunch here. I expect to see him in D.C. 2 weeks from now. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in Indy the week after that. He wants it. You know, simply put, I mean, he loved playing the Players' Championship, and he didn't have a good tournament, really. Self-admittedly, you know, he was one of the first 4 people out of the tournament. He said, I want to get back there. I want to do it again. Kind of redeem myself.
No, and you know, for a lot of the players who got bounced early, just even hanging around and cube drafting and watching the matches, you can tell there's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of desire to share the experience again.
Yeah.
Even for the players who did not do well.
And I can tell you the Players' Championship for 2015 is in the planning stages. It is going to be bigger and better than it was just a few weeks ago. So if you have your eyes out on the Players' Championship or looking forward to watch it at the end of the year, trust me, you are going to like what is being put together for that. Davis looks like he's going to take a mulligan. Jessup looks like he's going to do the same.
Now Storm, a critical mass deck, tries to build up, of course, a density of spells to be able to cast all in one turn, and so mulligans are especially punishing for this deck.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, this deck, as you mentioned, critical mass deck is the best way to put it, but we have seen sometimes where some of the draws just allow itself, even though it mulligans once, to still be able to go off in the first turn of the game.
Oh, for sure. It can win from a relatively low base, but still, mulligans are more punishing to this deck than most.
And it looks like both players have mulliganed down to 5 here. I thought perhaps they were taking a look at 6 cards, but they're both looking at 5. You can see Jessup does have a copy of Forcible among the other cards in his hand. Davis looks like he's happy enough with what he's found. Jessup too, and both these players will shrug their shoulders, can be as happy as they can be with 5 cards. And round number 6 of 9 here is underway. Davis trying to figure out exactly what land he wants to start off with. Perhaps a Gataxian Probe, something of the sort, but just a Misty Rainforest and a passing of the turn. And Polluted Delta will be sacrificed here by Jessup. He's going to go down to 19. You have to imagine Volcanic Island is coming.
And the one piece that was really missing from Jessup's hand here was a clock. He had Force of Will, which is pretty good against a Storm player who has 5 cards, but no pressure, and the first draw step yield Delver of Secrets.
And that may have been the missing piece to the puzzle. Now again, Jessup's hand is still pretty good. You know, he's got a Forkbolt over there. Doesn't play a big role in this matchup, but a Probe and a copy of Force will certainly do. Let's do that Delver Secret as well. Now the question is, does he want to do that with Probe or just play the Delver? And it looks like he will go with the Probe. So going to get an idea of what Jim is working with now, and it is a Brainstorm at Ad Nauseam. Looks like a Probe of Jim's own, and then a copy of Polluted Delta. Jim had the ability to cast the Probe earlier if he wanted to last turn, but going to wait.
Well, I don't think there's a huge rush to probing right now, and it's nice to leave some spells back in case you're going off in one turn with some sort of Storm kill.
There is the Delver, and a passing of the turn. We'll head back Davis's way. Davis will draw a copy of Preordain.
Also in this sort of deck where you're playing with Cabal Therapy, if there's no immediate need to Gataxian Probe, you're not really looking for land drops, and Jim has his land drops. He's not trying to Storm kill in all one turn. It's worth having a Gataxian Probe left in your hand. So in the event that you draw Cabal Therapy, you can see exactly what's going on.
Well, Davis, very methodical, as many have found out here pretty quickly. We've had a lot more of him in the feature match area as he has been putting up some solid results. Nothing quick about his pace of play, but I'll tell you one thing. Once he comes to a decision, it's typically the right one. Ponder here is the new card in Jessup's hand. So Jim's going to get this information of Forcible, Ponder, Forkbolt, and Treasure Cruise and move forward accordingly.
And Jim decided to Gataxian Probe right now as it could inform his Preordain, which it looks like he's likely to cast this turn.
He will sacrifice Misty Rainforest, go down to 17, and get a land out of his deck. We'll see which one he decides. A lot of options here available to the Storm player, but he will go with a copy of Underground Sea. As you mentioned, that Gataxian Probe, now that he sees the grip, he'll know what to Preordain for.
Yes.
No reason what to just put away.
No reason to Gataxian Probe on turn 0. You wait until you either need lands or the information matters to you.
And now the cards that he's looking at there in Probe plus Therapy really do support your idea.
Yeah, it's very well timed there by Jim.
Cabal Therapy, he keeps on top. Gataxian Probe he puts on the bottom. And don't remember, Jim has not played a land yet. He started the game off with just a Misty and the passing of the turn. Now he will play a Delta and just pass the turn back. And I like the option of just passing there as opposed to playing the Cabal Therapy. Cabal Therapy looks like it's going to be a piece of the puzzle when he's trying to go off.
Exactly. There's no reason to get the Force of Will out of the hand right now just to have Jessup draw another Force of Will and then be in the same spot. So wait until you're actually going to go off. Jim with no Dark Rituals in his hand, not really close to casting Ad Nauseam, so no reason to rush it.
This is a Ponder, and that will resolve. So 3 cards coming here. A Brainstorm, a Delver of Secrets, and a Scalding Tarn. Let's see if Jessup is happy with what he's found. It is land number 2 after all, but it looks like he did pick up one for his draw step.
I mean, it does allow him for a pretty easy setup here of taking the Delver, leaving a spell on top, casting a second Delver, and then next turn, really starting to get the pressure going.
Looks like he's happy. He will take the Delver, swing in with the one that is in play. So Davis is going to go down to 16. There is an island, and now a Delver will come in. Jessup left over with Force of Will, Treasure Cruise, and a copy of Forked Bolt. Those Delvers will be flipping next turn. You have to imagine Davis knows that as he picks up a copy of Duress. Davis wants to sequence things as far as discard is concerned. You have to imagine he's going to be casting a discard spell at some point as he's going to start off with a Brainstorm. And what would be really interesting is if Jessup were to counter something like this with Force of Will, knowing that his Force of Will is probably on borrowed time here.
Exactly. I mean, it's hard to put Jim on having multiple discard spells at this point because, you know, you would imagine that Jim would have cast it by now. But it is correct. I mean, we know sitting on Jim's side of the table that if Danny went and just forced to will this Brainstorm, Jim would be very upset because the discard spells in his hand now wouldn't matter, and he would be pretty far away from being able to cast Ad Nauseam.
It would take perfect draw steps, really.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Jessup isn't working with that knowledge in the same fashion that we are. So Jim is going to resolve a Brainstorm, draw 3, put 2 back here in just a moment. Looks like Duress is one of the ones that's going to be going back here, and he does have a fetch land in play to make it a very good Brainstorm.
Jim pretty much ideally would like, in my opinion, would like to have Cabal Therapy exactly for the turn he's about to go off. He doesn't really want to space out these Duresses along the way because it's just not worth very much to go after one discard spell. You really, or one counter spell. You really want to wait until the turn you're going off, get his entire hand of Force of Wills, and then try to push through.
Blue Delta will be sacrificed. Davis going to go down to 15. He'll be digging up a land here in just a moment. Looks like he's going to go with Underground Sea yet again. So let's see if Jim does want to fire off a discard spell now. Looks like he does have a copy of Gataxian Probe in his hand too, though. Looks like the Brainstorm was pretty helpful. That's what he's going to do. So there's a Probe. And Jim says, I already know your hand. And it looks like he may have been paying mana for it. It's a little unclear, but it looks like he was paying mana for that Probe.
Yeah, Jim is going to be mana sensitive here because, you know, he's going to try to Therapy and then go off in one turn, which requires a lot of mana. And his Light Toll is a resource too. So all casting the Gataxian Probe is not free, so he just wants to cycle it at this point.
At this point, all casting that is anything but free. Because if I'm in Jim's spot here, and of course I have the luxury of knowing the top card of Jessup's deck is a spell, it's going to flip those Delver Secrets. But I think you are safe in Jim's situation to say, hey, those are not 1/1s, those are 3/2s. I'm taking 6 next turn.
Yeah, I can't imagine a world where, you know, Danny is leaving with Ponder and then not flipping those Delvers.
Yeah, whenever I'm playing a Delver Secrets deck, you know, when you're playing combo deck, it's okay. I'm assuming I'm taking 3. If that's not the case, it's all upside.
Right.
But you're assuming next turn if you're Jim, well, I'm at 14. Okay, well, I'm actually at 8. Let's call it what it is. Going to get a Bayou out of his deck here. And perhaps we will see the Cabal Therapy this turn. Yeah, we will. And I think the reason for this is because he doesn't have enough time or mana or the combination of the two to be able to say, oh, Therapy you, and then do stuff.
Yeah, the bottleneck is mana. So he's just has to cast this now, even though this is not ideal. Because if, you know, Jessup has a Force of Will on top or Brainstorms into Force of Will, it's bad news for Jim, but his mana just might be too tight. He might not have the luxury of waiting for next turn.
Jim's got to get a little bit lucky here. There's a Brainstorm from Jessup, so 3 cards coming. We know he's got a Treasure Cruise and a Fork Bolt, and he just added a Force of Will to it. And that might be the check mark right there.
Yep. I mean, Jim will not be playing around it at this point. He probably is not going to value casting discard spells very highly, and that combined with the fact that he's going to be dead pretty quickly here means that I think game 1 is going to go to Danny.
And that's the one card that Jim just does not want to see on the other side of the table at this point. It's just that one Force of Will. You know, he might be able to beat something like a Spell Pierce, like a Daze, what have you, if things do line up correctly. But Force of Will might be the hole in the armor. And as you mentioned, he's not going to be playing around it. Don't think he can even afford to, given the clock that's on the table.
No, I think he just is going to. I mean, last turn casting the Cabal Therapy is the signal to me that Jim is just going to go for it this turn.
Yeah, and this is really tough too, because you take a look at how his hand is set up. His hand only allows him to play one way. He's got 2 Lotus Petals and Lion's Eye Diamond and Ad Nauseam. I think it would have been tough for him to win this game anyway, because he's at 8 life casting Ad Nauseam. But
well, it looks like his hand is Petal, Lion's Eye Diamond, Ad Nauseam, which is not a horrible base.
no, it's a pretty good base, actually.
He would be able to cast Ad Nauseam at 8 with 3 mana floating. No promises of anything, but that's not bad.
I mean, 8's not a lot of life, of course, but you know, kind of is what it is. And, you know, Jim goes for the Ad Nauseam. Danny's got the Forceful Moving Brainstorm. And just like that, we're headed to a second game here. Never know if Jim would have gotten there with Ad Nauseam. Brainstorm, again, demonstrating its power.
Yeah, and Jim can safe conceding there. Not only is he out of resources, he knows that Danny still has a Fork Bolt floating around there. So the attack knocks him to 2, and then Fork Bolt finishes it off.
Danny Jessup going to win game number 1 here over his good friend Jim Davis. Blue-Red Delver up a game over Storm. As we turn our attention to the sideboards, we will look at Jim. There's a lot of different ways you can go with the Storm and sideboard. How has he opted to go this weekend?
3 Abrupt Decay, 2 Dark Confidant, 2 Chain of Vapor, 2 Carpet of Flowers, 2 Surgical Extractions, 2 Xantid Swarms, and 2 Massacres. I really like the copies of Carpet of Flowers here. Generates just extra mana. It's sort of a ritual you get to break up over the course of several turns. And the Abrupt Decays can handle some of the pressure if Jim wants to go down that road.
Other side of things here for Jessup. He's got 2 Smash Smithereens, 2 copies of Electrickery, 2 Flusterstorms, 2 Pyroblast, 2 Price of Progress, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Hydroblast, a Pithy Needle, and a Sulfuric Vortex.
So not a ton going on here that I'm a fan of. The Flusterstorms and the Pyroblasts are nice. If there is no Burning Wish package here, so I believe that makes Hydroblast a little too narrow to bring in. Grafdigger's Cage, again, it's super narrow, but maybe comes in. The additional counter spells are the best part, and then there's some more narrow options past that.
Yeah, Sulfuric Vortex, another narrow option. If you want to try to turn up the heat, I think it's pretty bad on the draw, though.
It's a little too slow, I think, for this kind of matchup. Yeah, just too slow.
Well, those are the options available to both players, and game number 2 will be underway here in just a moment between these 2 good friends. And we talk about their match at the Season 4 Invitational in Seattle. They collided in the semifinals. Danny was victorious, but Danny lost in the finals to Dylan Donegan, who is our newest invitational token. If you guys have not seen his elemental token for Young Pyromancer, there it is.
Well, if you like your elemental tokens a little less burly and a little less facial hair-y, then you can show off your Chris Van Meter tokens and go get the Dylan Donegan tokens, which are available now.
Yeah, Dylan's tokens will be coming in orders now. We have to have a new system in place to get invitational tokens. You'll see what Tom Ross is here in just a moment. Tom, of course, winning the Season 3 Invitational, so we're still getting on his Vampire token at the beginning of 2015 here, and then we will be delivering Dylan's tokens everywhere. All Open Series competitors, MirIQ competitors, as well as each online order over $5.
But keep in mind, this is a limited time offer, so if you want to get the Tom Ross tokens, then head over to an Open Series or Premier IQ, or just place an online order for over $5.
And we'll work Dylan's into the equation, and then eventually we'll work our Season 1 champion here of 2015 in the equation. Don't know who it's going to be, don't know what it's going to be. So if you do win Season 1, if you don't select the Monk token, you're probably doing it wrong.
That seems like an easy one.
And, you know, it's a gimme.
Right. You would
Pretty
have to have an especially non-monk-like personality, I think, to avoid the monk.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get some camera time and some play, and people are going to need you, then I think you're supposed to select the Monk token.
Yeah. Although, you know, that's not always the way the things work. You know, Derek Sheets, you don't see a lot of Swan Song tokens. Doesn't get cast a ton. But the sweetness of his token I think it was well worth it.
Absolutely.
So you just find, you have to establish your own priorities and go from there.
So I know who I am. I'm thankful a Goblin Rabble Master came along.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I was about to say, you never know when your token's going to make a comeback.
True.
The Goblin token was really on the decline for a couple of years there, but
Bad call.
Hordeling Outburst,
Yep.
Goblin Rabble Master,
Yep.
now you're all over the place.
Absolutely.
Dozens of you frequently in play during standard coverage.
I am often running into a Courser of Crufix and dying. It's really great. I'm actually glad to have a weekend off of that. It's really nice.
Before, we were really only seeing your face when someone was emptying the Warrens for a bunch. Now, all the time.
Well, I was out there sometimes. You know, I was being killed by Golgari Charm and Engineered Plague and Gut Shot and anything else that kills a Goblin token.
Being flown over by Insectile Aberration.
Yes, absolutely.
Just watching the action overhead.
Coming into play because someone's too lazy to pay Echo on Mog War Marshal. Lucky me. Here I am. Jim Davis is going to be on the play here for game number 2. He's kept his hand, as has Jessup, so both players actually have 7 cards this go around. See how things shake out when they both have full hands.
It's definitely better for Jim to both have 7 than both have 5. As we saw, Danny's able to run very resource light.
Yeah. It's one of the selling points of this Blue-Red Delver deck is they can mulligan to 4, or they can mulligan down to 5. I don't want to say 4, that's a bit much, but they can mulligan down to 5 and still function just as they normally would.
Yeah, the biggest consequence is your Treasure Cruise is much harder to cast when you're on that many cards.
Jessup's hand, 2 copies of Delver's Secrets, a Graph Digger's Cage, a Ponder, a Force of Will, a Young Pyromancer, and a copy of Scalding Tarn as his only source of mana. So Jim picks up that information with Gataxian Probe and will move forward accordingly. Even though it does look kind of like a sketchy hand, these are the kind of hands that Blue-Red Delver keeps.
Well, we just mentioned, very good at running resource light, and this is a very good resource light hand.
And it has probably the most important card there, too, in Delver's Secrets.
Yep. That and Force of Will is a really nice, real nice pair of cards for Danny to have in the opening hand.
Now, part of the reason that people have moved towards Storm is because they feel they have a good Blue-Red Delver matchup. So we'll see if that actually ends up being the truth here as these 2 players continue on in game number 2. Carpet of Flowers among the cards that Davis is looking at here with Ponder.
Well, part of that is, you know, the matchup, the good matchup for Storm is having a very good game 1. So it's much worse now for Jim that he lost the first game, because post-board, these Delver decks usually pick up a good number of permission spells. Some of them have a Cabal Therapy package. You see Graph Digger's Cage in Danny's hand right now. It gets a lot more challenging post-board.
Well, Jim gonna finish up here with the Ponder. The other card there is Gataxian Probe. We go this Carpet of Flowers and Tropical Island. Jim gonna keep. It's really tough to pass up on the combination, I think, of Tropical Island and Carpet of Flowers. Carpet is just so good against these blue decks.
Yeah, it makes to the Dazes and Flusterstorms and all that kind of stuff that Danny has so much worse.
Scalding Tarn very quickly getting sacrificed. And there's a Volcanic Island.
I mean, the absolute floor for Carpet of Flowers is it's a Mox.
Yeah.
Effectively, once it's in play.
Yeah.
It's a permanent source of mana, and it could be much better than that.
It's a card that is starting to make its way around Legacy a little bit more than you would think. You typically see it as a sideboard card for Storm decks. And it's starting to make its way into Maverick decks, their sideboard. If you pay attention to Jerry Thompson's Daily Digest on Star City Games, you'll see some interesting Carpet of Flowers brews, including on Monday, spoiler alert.
I mean, Maverick can do a lot with a burst of mana early on in the game.
Here's a Delver's Secrets.
It's not quite ad nauseum kill you, but it's, you know, neither Reliquary is in play way ahead of schedule will kill you.
You will be impressed, I think, by the carpet. It is a little bit confusing as far as the wording is concerned.
During your main phase is super clear. I just imagine Carpet of Flowers on Magic Online just at some point randomly in a main phase just like throwing mana at you.
You're like thinking about your turn. Ah!
Yeah, you don't get to choose. It's just like, here's 2 red mana.
Yeah.
It's during your main phase. Now you have it.
Yeah. Jim on his second turn here with an Infernal Tutor and Ad Nauseam. Probe as well. We know about the carpet and the ability to cast it. Pluto Delta there to help find a Tropical Island. Got a pretty nice hand here. Just the big trick with Storm, a deck that Jim is starting to pick up a little bit here. It's just how do you sequence these spells?
especially now that he knows about Force of Will. And Danny knows that Jim knows about Force of Will. Every spell, you know, the timing of it's a lot more challenging, and everything that Jim plays that looks valuable, Danny knows that Jim is aware of the Force of Will, and that, you know, informs Danny's decision on whether or not he wants to use it.
Taxiing Probe going to give away some information here that Pyroblast has been found here by Jessup. That's the new one. So Jim will draw a card, and it's the Trop. Trop's going to come down, and here's Carpet of Flowers. And this will be interesting to see if Danny wants to fight over this. It does generate some nice mana here for Jim. However, right now it's only 1 mana.
Yes. I'd be surprised if this was worth a fight, especially since he doesn't even have land number 2 right now.
But Carpet kind of contorts the way that Jessup can play. You know, with cards like Daze and Spell Pierce and stuff, really just do a nice job of shutting those off. So something definitely to think about as it's going to resolve. Davis is just going to pass the turn back. Now, don't forget, with Carpet of Flowers, it says during your main phase, but that's either main phase. You only get to use it once.
Right.
But it could be main phase 1 or main phase 2. As Jessup will get into the red zone. Delver to not flip. Mountain was the draw step.
Mountain is pretty much perfect. And because it's not something that adds to Carpet of Flowers, but it is land number 2.
Yeah.
Which is really funny for me because I think the Mountain in this deck is really, really bad. But it's the perfect draw right now, that's for sure.
It's funny because I also find the Mountain to be generally terrible in this deck, and it is basically the perfect land to find. It also allows Danny to tap for a Delver Secrets and leave up mana for Pyroblast.
Yeah, no, it's the perfect draw.
It is often ridiculed and quickly cut by a lot of players who are playing Blue-Red Delver.
I was watching one of our buyers, Wes Wise, who also has produced some video content from Star City periodically.
Yep.
He has a substantial Magic Online collection. I was watching him play some Blue-Red Delver, and there was a very strong correlation between Mountain appears in opening hand and mulligans.
Oh.
Very strong correlation.
They go together.
Yeah.
The old Mountain strategy.
But this moment, the Mountain is perfect.
This might be the best the Mountain's ever been.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is.
Desperately needs land number 2 and really does not want it to be an island. Perfect.
So I'm trying to figure out exactly how he wants to move forward here. Again, Carpet of Flowers can trigger during this main phase or his other one, depending on how he's feeling. It would add a color of mana, given that Jessup only has 1 island in play. Perhaps it's time for something like an Infernal Tutor. Just the regular version of it, not Hellbent. The texture of Jim's hand is a little bit awkward here. He's going to reveal Cabal Ritual, which is not a card that you're really all that thrilled in revealing. You know, you'd rather reveal a card like Dark Ritual or Lotus Petal or Lion's Eye Diamond, because Cabal Ritual is a expensive ritual in this particular deck and in this situation.
Though Jim's use is going to be working with more mana in his main phase than he typically does because of Carpet of Flowers.
Yeah. Jim will play a copy of Polluted Delta. Well, it looks like he'll be content just passing the turn back. If you're Jessup, it's pretty important for your Delver to flip here, I think, this turn.
Yeah, you really want to increase the clock here.
Take a look at the top card. Polluted Delta. Draw steps have not been friendly, excuse me, to Danny here so far.
Blue-Red Delver just flooding out again.
A classic case. Here's a Ponder. That will resolve. Take a look at a couple. Wooded Foothills, Polluted Delta, and a Monster Swift Spear. If that's not a shuffle, I don't know what is.
Well, I'm actually not so sure because I think that Danny could want to just take the Swift Spear to have some more pressure in play, and then use the fetch line he just drew to shuffle away the 2 other lands.
Okay.
I feel like Swift Spear is better than a random draw here, but maybe not. Because he could still leave up Pyroblast and Force of Will.
Yeah, I guess I take that back. I was going to say I like the days that he drew, but actually I don't really like the days that he drew because of Carpet.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of invalidates that.
Jim's got more than enough mana to work with, I feel like.
There's the attack for 1. Hey, you do make an interesting argument there with Swiss Spirit maybe looking better than one would assume.
Well, he needs to speed up the clock a little bit here, you know? You got to be worried. Jim knows about your hand. He knows what counterspells that you have. He's building up a lot of mana, and you just have to worry that Jim's kind of going to be able to play the game on his own terms.
Interesting thing here, too, is that Carpet is kind of contorted the way that Jessup can play the game. Jessup had the ability to deploy a Delver Secrets that turn if he wanted to. Now, you take a look at Jessup's hand. He's got 2 red cards in Young Pyromancer and Pyroblast, and 3 blue cards in Delver Secrets, Daze, and Force of Will. So he's kind of incentivized to want to play the Delver Secrets to speed things up a little bit, but he's also incentivized to hold it so he can have Force of Will and Delver being the blue card to remove it, and then Daze.
Which is another reason that I like Swiss Spear last turn, because it's a threat he gets to add to the table that does not force him to crack the polluted delta until he has to. It's something he could have played off the mountain.
It's time for a duress. Jim going to add a black mana from the Carpet and say, let me see your hand. I don't think Jessup wants to show it to him, though. As he's not working with too much. Duress again will show Force of Will, Delver Secrets, Daze, Pyroblast, and Young Pyromancer. And predictably, the Force of Will go to the graveyard. Can Jim continue now, though? You do see Dark Ritual along with 2 copies of Cabal Ritual. Ad nauseam and Infernal Tutor in hand.
Well, Danny has no disruption for non-blue cards besides Daze. And I think Jim's hand's got to have a lot of mana as he Infernal Tutored for Cabal Ritual with another one in hand.
No. You're throwing a Dark Ritual there, too. He has got plenty of mana. That's not the issue. And looks like somebody might be turning up the heat with their Storm deck. There's a Dark Ritual. This is a Cabal Ritual with Threshold, mind you. Another Cabal Ritual. So plenty of black mana here for Davis.
I count 9.
I'll count 9 right there with you. Dark Ritual is 3, -2 + 5. That'll be 6, -2 + 5, bring it up to 9. And now here's Ad Nauseam. 4 black mana floating, 5th spell of the turn. Infernal Tutor left over in hand. So we'll see how things do go with the risky spell. Pretty, bring it down to 14. Carpet down to 13. Brainstorm down to 12. Lion's Eye Diamond will keep you where you're at. Cabal Therapy down to 11. Ponder down to 10. It's pretty good ad nauseum.
So far, so good. Keep in mind, though, he still can't go off through Past in Flames.
Yeah. Ritual down to 8. Brainstorm down to 7. The 2 Lion's Eye Diamonds there are pretty nice.
He does have a natural Tendrils kill here if he can find Tendrils.
Yeah. We can't forget he's got Infernal Tutor in his hand as the last card as well. So he might not even need that. He might just decide that I've got what I need and I'm just doing the count right now. Again, 5 spells. Ad Nauseam was the 5th one. Lion's Eye Diamonds 6 and 7. Infernal Tutor is 8. Cabal Ritual, I suppose, could be 9. And then Tendrils could be 10.
Yep.
You always want to make sure you don't mess something up here, though.
Exactly. He can just Cabal Therapy the Daze even if he wants to, you know. It's not neutral on mana, but
yeah, the thing that happens a lot in this situation as a player is, you know, okay, I've got the kill. All right, let me make sure I don't mess this up.
for sure. He has to keep in mind that there's also Pyroblast involved too.
Yeah. And we have seen players make mistakes here in the past, just getting a little too overconfident. It can happen. There is Cabal Therapy. We saw Cabal Ritual before it. And now here's Lion's Eye Diamond. There's a diamond. This will be an Infernal Tutor here in just a moment. And Danny, even though he is very good friends with Jim, says, I'm not going to concede. You got to kill me, man.
But I think he's cast well beyond the number of spells required.
Oh,
here.
yeah, spell count not going to be much of a problem. There's a Carpet of Flowers. Now here is a here's an Infernal Tutor. We're going to see Lion's Eye Diamonds, that card I was going to mention. get cracked in response. Holding priority with Infernal Tutor, which means that when Infernal Tutor does resolve, no cards in hand, Hellbent has been satisfied, and it's time to dig up the old drills. There it is. Jim Davis going to win game number 2 here over Danny Jessup. Storm, Blue Red Delver, going to game number 3.
And you can see why. I'm not a huge fan of the really narrow sideboard cards because Danny there drew a Grafdigger's Cage and didn't do anything.
Yeah. Jim has just proven that he doesn't need to win with Past in Flames, though there are situations in game states where you get your opponent low enough that ad nauseum isn't an option, and then you only have the option to win through Past in Flames, and that's where the cage is better. But I agree with you. Its narrowness, it was a mulligan that game. It wasn't a card.
Yeah. Now, as you mentioned, Grafdigger's Cage, when it's backed up by pressure, becomes a real thing. Because if you shut off Past in Flames and they have to go off through ad nauseum and you've dealt some damage, that can be really nice. But that game, Danny really didn't have much of a clock. And another thing worth noting is that Pyroblast was another card that did nothing.
Yeah.
And once Jim's armed with the information, a lot of the times he's going to be able to work his way around some of the more narrow sideboard cards. Now, Force of Will is almost always going to be good for Danny, and Fluster Storms are probably going to be good for him no matter what, but some of the more narrow cards, especially when Jim knows about them, can be pretty bad.
And perhaps what it takes after sideboard is for those narrow cards to line up appropriately to win. And that might be the tough thing here.
And that's why you often see Delver players use Pyroblast on the first thing their opponent presents, as a Brainstorm, as a Ponder. Not trying to save him over some sort of huge spell, because there's no guarantee you're going to get anything better than just a cantrip.
Game number 3 here between Davis and Jessup going to be underway in just a moment. Very quickly, we will talk about Benny Smith's fantastic book, The Complete Commander Updated with Commander 2014.
Yeah, Benny Smith's been a staple of casual Magic and of this format in particular since the very beginnings of it, and so he's very well equipped to write this book. It's an update for Commander 2014. It's now available on PDF form. Head over to starcitygames.com/completecommander to get your copy today.
A lot of people have been going to starcitygames.com for a very long time. Myself, I started, right at the beginning of college. So I've been going to that website for almost 10 years now, and Benny Smith has been there since what seems like day one.
And more competitive chops than I think people give him credit for. Former Virginia State champion, and I believe has played in a Pro Tour or two. Yep. I mean, he's had some success there, but definitely known for much more of his casual play and particularly his influence on the Commander format.
One of the very best in that field. Commander is a format I think it would be, it's kind of weird. I think it would be a fun competitive format, even though that's kind of backwards since it's not meant to be a competitive format. But I think 100-card singleton decks and the Commander format, I think if I'd like to see what happens if one Open Series event or one Grand Prix Pro Tour was that format. What would happen?
Sure. I mean, part of the problem is that the ban list, I think, is much more about maximizing what's perceived to be fun about the format rather than trying to get everything balanced for raw power level reasons. So
sure.
Sol Ring is legal, even though Sol Ring is one of the most egregious Magic cards ever printed. And I think if you want to take Commander to the Open Series and have the Open Series competitors enjoy it, you would need to really rework what the ban list looked like. And I think that ban list is trying to serve a different master than let's make sure the power level of the format is balanced.
Sure, I could see Sol Ring leaving. Not a tough argument
But
there.
if we're all playing at our kitchen table and all we're trying to do is just play big creatures and stuff, Sol Ring might be fine in our games. It's broken, but it's not. Well, we still get to, you cast Shivan Dragon if you're Sol Ring, I can still terror it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not facilitating storm kills or something like what would be going on if you were able to play it in Legacy X4.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Thankfully.
So.
It's a little too good there.
It's not like the Commander community that regulates the ban list argues about whether or not Sol Ring is really powerful. The argument is Sol Ring powerful in a destructive way given what we're trying to accomplish in the format? And I suppose the argument could be no.
I think since it's been around so long and they are pretty proactive with their bannings.
Everyone gets to play with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's only one.
So there's only one.
When it does show up, the games are probably more fun than we think.
For one player, at least.
Sure. One player gets to have a blast.
One player gets to have a blast.
Yeah. That's for sure. I don't think it's as egregious as a card like, Sylvan Primordial.
Sol Ring being legal makes me not want to play the format, but I can appreciate that they're not trying to cater to me. So,
sure.
have the ban list try to fulfill what you're having it try to fulfill.
Jim is going to take another mulligan here. He's going down to 5. Doesn't look thrilled about it either. He can't beat his friend. Can't beat Danny J.
Nope, can't touch him. Back in the Target days, we all had our pairings where this person just randomly had a very, very good matchup over time.
Who was it for you? Who couldn't you beat? Who couldn't you lose to?
I could never beat John Sani.
Okay.
And I could never lose to Eugene Harvey.
Wow.
And Eugene's way, way better than I am. But my record against him, both in like random FNMs and also like matches that matter, like Nationals and Pro Tours, is well above 50%.
From what I've heard, Paul Chion has quite a bit of difficulty against you as well.
Yeah, I mean he's back and I'm doing this. So, but trust me, I'm chomping at the bit to get another chance at Chion.
See what Jim's got here for the first turn.
Chion also way better than I am.
Yeah, Chion, unbelievable.
Really, really good. Yeah. But
well, this is actually a pretty good hand here for Jessup. He's got 2 Brainstorms, a Force Will, a Flusterstorm, a Polluted Delta, and a copy of Treasure Cruise, but missing a very important piece of the puzzle, a clock.
Yeah, just something to do. And if he finds something to do, a creature here, then his hand is spectacular. The only real weakness right now is nothing to attack Jim with, but that hand's by no means a mulligan, even though it's missing that piece right now.
And for Jim, you got to be pretty thrilled about that because you're not under the gun. You got plenty of time to set up, and you're hoping that Jessup doesn't brainstorm his way into a Delver of Secrets that's flipping or a Monastery of Swiftspear.
Yeah, you do have hope. Even though Danny's hand, again, is very good, can be hard for Jim to win, but if there was a Swiftspear or a Delver on turn 1, you could almost count it at that point.
Here's a Ponder. Now that Jim knows what Danny is armed with, he's able to ponder appropriately, and he very quickly shuffles with this one, not liking what he sees.
He's going to require a lot of discard this game.
Jim will draw a mystery card. It's a copy of Cataxian Pro. Pass the turn back over to Jessup. Jessup going to draw a card. It's a copy of Daze. He will play Polluted Delta. And looks like he's going to be playing a Brainstorm here. And he is. So 3 cards coming. Going to be on the hunt for a creature here for Jessup. That's what my eyes will be looking for. And not one yet. It's not like those are bad cards.
Well, it's a bunch of blue stuff, so it's got to be more counter spells or cantrips. There's fine, but again, I'm sure Jim will take it.
A couple of cards going to go back here for Jessup. All Jim wants is time. Time to get set up, time to lead out with discard spells like Duress and Cabal Therapy, time to play Carpet of Flowers and take advantage of the extra mana. And then he can get the job done from there. Game 1, he wasn't given that. Game 2, he was given just enough. Volcanic Island. Perhaps Jessup going to cast another manipulation spell. No, I'll just simply pass the turn back over to Davis. Davis will draw. Copy of Dark Ritual.
I was going to say, a little interested to see Danny not cast a cantrip here because he's not really at risk of dying. Makes me feel like he just wants to flush a storm anything that gets cast, just to continue to wear Jim's total resources down.
Jim considering a Brainstorm. And I'll go Probe. I don't think he's going to like what he's looking at. 2 Flusterstorms now, along with the Days of Force, a Cruise, and a Ponder. Ugh.
It still makes me wonder why Danny did not ponder last turn, because you're so unlikely to die. The only reason to leave this up is if you were planning on just Flusterstorming a cantrip that got cast. And since Danny has not pulled the trigger on this Cataxian Probe, I'm not sure what the incentive to not ponder was.
Davis will just pass the turn back. Going Jessup's way. Jessup will draw. And now here is the Ponder. Saw Polluted Delta was his draw step. A Bolt, a Swift Spear, and a copy of Skull Hunter. You see him very quickly put Swift Spear to the top.
That's the prize. Something to do.
I'm gonna draw. There's a Swift Spear. Play the Delta. Here's old Swifty. And it's time for the beatdowns. Put Davis down to 16. Now, of course, 1 damage is not even close to 3, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's not the best pairing with all the reactive cards in Danny's hand, but it's still fine.
There's a Brainstorm from Davis. I'm very curious on how Jessup's going to use these spells.
So I guess Danny's logic was Gitaxian Probe just cycling here. That's not good enough to warrant using a Flusterstorm on, even though he gave up casting the Pond to the previous turn. But this Brainstorm does enough that this is worth a fight.
There's Flusterstorm to go after Brainstorm. And I actually like the use of this Flusterstorm, and I like the play here by Jessup in general, excuse me. It's just because a lot of people would simply just sit here and say, I'm gonna wait for the one big turn, but you can stop from ever getting to the big turn.
Yeah.
And Jim can arguably prepare for the big turn maybe better than you can. So I like that, because Brainstorm is a very important card for this deck to get going.
And Jim's doing some counter here, and he's got a Duress. I don't think he's that far off from being able to kill Danny.
You're always scared when you see a Storm opponent doing counting, too, after counting the Brainstorm. Now, it looks like Jeff's going to go for a little cruise, and he will trigger the Swift Spear, too. So 3 cards coming here for Jessup, a Bolt, a Force of Will, and another Bolt. Things have certainly changed here now as he comes across for 2 points of damage. Davis is going to go down to 14, but he could be facing lethal 2 or 3 turns from now. He doesn't expect that to be the case.
Yeah, second Bolt here is a really good draw. Next turn he gets to do quite a bit of damage.
Yeah. Davis is going to play a Polluted Delta. Here's a Brainstorm. See if Jessup let this one go. He will. So 3 cards coming here for Davis.
Yeah, can't Flusterstorm it as things stand without adding another spell to the stack, so... and the Flusterstorm just gets better over time, this turn at least, so no reason to counter this.
A Polluted Delta looks like it's going to go back. We'll see what the other card will be in just a moment. Looks like a Brainstorm. Perhaps a little too much manipulation here for Jim's taste, so he's going to put a Brainstorm and a Delta back. Brainstorm is done resolving. And it'll pass the turn back. A lot of patience here by Davis.
Yep.
Delver Secret's the draw. And see, that's the other thing that's really interesting about this matchup is there's a lot of patience there from Jim, but is he too patient?
Well, he knows what he's up against. That's part of the problem here. He can't really rush it right now. So he just has to hope that Danny's hand doesn't have the capacity to kill Jim quickly, and that additional discard spells or draw steps just help Jim out.
Well, this will be a Bolt. Going to get a little more aggressive now. Swift Spear going to get a little bit bigger, of course. Perhaps another Bolt's in order.
And I like this from Danny. He's got the mana left over, and you don't know, maybe Jim has to go off through ad nauseum, and then these extra points of damage matter a lot.
There's the attack now. It's an aggressive line, but I like it. Now Davis is all of a sudden down to 5, where he was so healthy before.
And Danny has to decide whether he wants to cast Delver and leave himself a double Force of Will backup, or cast nothing and have 2 Force of Wills plus Flusterstorm.
I like the latter. I like double Force of Will plus Flusterstorm.
It's a better hedge against Cabal Therapy. Although I guess effectively Cabal Therapy and Duress are the same card at that point. You're not worried you're giving Jim a little bit too much time without the Delver in play?
I am a little worried. I am.
Because a spell you can cast as a kill if it's on top of your deck.
Sure. I mean, it's a real decision to be made, and it's definitely scary.
Standard challenge players to round one pairs are going up on the SCG pair.
He's going to risk it.
On green paper. Standard challenge players who round one pairs are up.
And Davis does have a manipulation spell here in Brainstorm. Didn't crack a fetch land. But again, if you're Jim, you have to wonder exactly how much time do I have left to mess around here. There's Brainstorm.
Particularly when Jim has to crack these fetch lands.
Yep.
You know, you get this feeling of Jim can't really crack them until he's ready to kill Danny.
Delta, Infernal, Tutor, and Duress are the draws. Now, those are pretty good draws. And he's going to have to put a couple of cards back here. And it looks like Ponder and Pluto Delta are headed back to the top of the deck. But those are pretty good draws there for Davis.
A lot of discard, a lot of mana.
Yep. It's ways for him to clear the path.
Please report at table 247, the Legacy Challenge. Jonathan Borowski, please report to table 247.
And nobody said it's going to be easy to figure out exactly how to sequence these spells, how much time he has. And also, he doesn't know what's on top of Jessup's deck. He could just die next turn.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, too.
A bolt's a kill.
Yep. Jessup could just chain off with Ponders and Brainstorms and Probes. Just, it is feasible that there is no next turn here for Davis. Let's also keep in mind, too, that Davis is at a virtual 3 right now because of the 2 fetch lands that are in play, and he's going to need all of that mana.
Yep.
We know that.
But he also might view this from the perspective of it's not clear Danny will be able to kill me next turn no matter what. He knows that a lot of Danny's hand's reactive, and Danny didn't follow up with any sort of cantrips or anything else after combat. So I think Jim can pretty comfortably guess that a lot of Danny's hand has to be counter spells, because what else would it be?
Davis is going to go down to 4. See what land he wants to search up here. It looks like he is leaning towards Underground Sea. No, it's not a lock at this point. He's just going to go with just a basic swamp. Interesting choice there.
He may know that Danny has access to Price of Progress in his list.
Does have one in his main deck. They are very good friends, after all. Here's Dark Ritual. Now this is where it gets interesting. Because is this real or fake, this Dark Ritual?
Yeah.
Is Jim saying, I think I'm going to get another turn to play, so I'm going to play Dark Ritual now. You're going to be so freaked out by the fact that I'm casting Dark Ritual, you're going to counter it? Well, I don't care if you counter this at all. And Jessup's going to use Flusterstorm here. And that might be exactly what Jim wanted to have happen. Again, if you're Danny, you can't be too sure.
No, it's hard to know. I've been on the other side of the table here when you're playing against Storm, where you just don't know what the bottleneck is. Do they only have one way to actually go off? Is one particular ritual effect the thing they really need to resolve? And then once that resolves, nothing else you do really matters.
So Jim says, all right, my Dark Ritual's gone. I'm going to go down to 3. Let's see what he wants to dig up now. We'll go with a copy of Underground Sea. Or will he? Go with a copy of Bayou. Looks like Ross Merriam, Jim, has played this deck before, but he doesn't have as many reps as some of the experts of this archetype.
Yeah.
And this will be a Duress. So Jim is slowly making his way through this wall of permission that Jessup has built.
I see no reason not to daze here. If you draw a blue card, you still have 2 copies of Force of Will. There's no guarantee that daze does anything in the future. If Duress resolves, you're down a Force of Will.
Gonna let it resolve. You would have preferred a daze in that situation. I can certainly see where you're coming from there. But Jessup says, here's my hand. You can either take the daze or one of the copies of Force of Will. Daze is interesting in this situation because Daze is still pretty good given Jim's board state.
Yeah.
So are you supposed to Daze the duress, or are you supposed to just hold on to it? Jim's only got 3 lands in play. Feels close. The decision here for Davis is not obvious on what he's supposed to take between Force of Will or Daze. And it looks like that is time for these players. So this will be turn 0. We will confirm that.
3 spots remaining in the last cruiser drive.
So Jessup's going to have turns 1, 3, and 5. Davis will have turns 2 and 4. And he'll take a Force of Will. And he'll pass the turn back over to Jessup. Jessup going to quickly untap. We know his hand, he'll draw a card. Pyroblast. And I think that lets him do it.
Yep.
So he'll play Delver Secrets. This is perfect for him.
Yeah, this is, I guess the argument for keeping Daze here is that it allows a kill this turn if he draws something castable.
Yeah. In a roundabout way, this gets the job done. Danny's a little unsure of himself at this point. He's maybe never had to do this before, but what he can do is he can actually cast Delver Secrets, and if it resolves or not, target it with Pyroblast, or target it with his own Daze and then Pyroblast that.
Yeah, it just allows him to cast multiple spells this turn.
That's all that matters for Monastery of Swiftspire, and that is going to do it. Danny Jessup's going to win this match here over Jim Davis. 2 games to 1. Blue-Red Delver will take care of Storm. Davis will pick up his first loss, and for Jessup, number 10 on our Season 1 leaderboard. He could be moving up past that if things keep going this way.
Some mulligans doomed Jim, particularly in Game 1, which I think is really important for Jim to get in this matchup, because you can see post-board, Danny's got a lot